For the pumpkin bow knots, there's just some general steps that you need to be aware of. I have dissolved the yeast and the sugar and the milk together. We use active, dry, quick yeast in all of our recipes for all of our breads that we make here at BYU. With this recipe, you're going to want to make sure that all of the ingredients are warm when you put them in. So I've melted the butter, I used warm water, I have warmed the egg. A trick in warming an egg is just to put hot tap water over it, and within about 30 seconds that will be warm enough to use in your recipe. Always crack your eggs into a dish so that in case there's any shells that you can keep them in the dish and not put them in your recipe. When it looks about this thick, I'm going to change to the dough hook. Adding the flour gradually. When you've kneaded it the right amount of time, the dough should come onto the hook and it should leave the sides of the pan. Then I'm going to take it out and I'm going to put it on a dinner plate that I have greased, and I'll cover it with plastic wrap and I'll put it in a proofing oven. For class today, what we've done is put an 8x8 aluminum pan filled with 2 cups of boiling water. We've heated the oven to 170 degrees, and that will create a warm, moist environment. So this is ready to put into the oven for the first proofing, or time to rise. When the pumpkin bow knots have doubled in size, you're going to take them off the dinner plate, divide the dough in half, and then you're going to roll the dough into 2 12 by 7-inch rectangles. When you have rolled the dough into 2 12 by 7-inch rectangles, you'll cut that into 12 7-inch lengths, and we will tie that into bow knots. I'm using the pizza cutter to cut it into the sections, and the tying method is basically just to tie a knot, and then you'll tuck the ends under. So I take it like this, wrap it around, bring it up through the middle, there's our knot, and then just bring these ends underneath. These will all fit on your jelly roll pan. We'll put that in the proofing oven, and that will proof until those have doubled in size, and then we'll bake them. To make the single pie crust, all you do is put the flour in a big mixing bowl, add the salt there, mix it together with a pastry cutter. This is what a pastry cutter looks like. Excellent tool to have in your kitchen, inexpensive, and it's a little easier than using 2 knives or fork to do what we're going to do with the pie crust. First step is to cut in about half of the quantity of shortening into the flour. Make sure your shortening is cold, and notice how I've measured this shortening. I've used plastic wrap in the measuring cup so that the measuring cup isn't as big a chore to clean later. So I'm putting about half the quantity of the shortening into the flour. I will cut it in with the pastry cutter. When it is the size of unpopped popcorn kernels or the size of Tic Tacs, then I'm ready for the second addition of fat into the pie crust recipe. When rolling out the pie crust, I like to roll it between 2 sheets of plastic wrap. Make sure that you've wet the counter so that the plastic wrap doesn't slip around, and that will make it so that it's nice and easy to roll out. And then put a piece of plastic wrap over the top as well. That also makes it easier to transport to the pie pan that you're going to be using. You can see now that the pieces of fat are about the size of unpopped popcorn kernels or Tic Tacs. Now I'm going to add the second quantity of fat, and I will mix this in until it's about the size of kidney beans. The first addition will make the pie crust tender. The second addition, by leaving the pieces of fat big, are what creates the layers in the pie crust to make it flaky. What I'm going to do now is add the water. Make sure that the water is cold. Measure the total quantity of water that you're going to use in the recipe in a liquid measuring cup. Then you will know that you're not going to use any more than that quantity, only the maximum amount. You might not use all of it, but put the maximum amount in a liquid measuring cup. I'm going to put tiny amounts around the outside edge. Then I'm going to use a rubber scraper to lift and toss to mix that water in. I don't pour it in all at once, and then as it starts to form a ball, I can look down in the bottom and I can see where the water needs to be added. You only want to add the water in the dry places where it needs to be added. You can actually shake the bowl, and the places that are starting to come together will come to the top. That means this has plenty of water. I don't need to add water there. I can add water just to the places that need the water, and then this whole thing will come together. I'll form it into a ball. The last step, I just use my hands to form it into a ball, and then we roll it out. Now this is mixed enough. Notice that I have a little bit of water left in my measuring cup. I didn't need it all because this flour that I'm using probably had a little bit more moisture in it. Flour always has differing amounts of moisture. You're going to get your hands in there now, and you're just going to bring it into a ball so that you can work with it. For this recipe, we're making a single pie crust. So now that is ready to roll out. I'm just going to set that aside. It doesn't look super smooth, but it will by the time we roll it out. Make sure that you moisten the countertop when you bring the plastic wrap up. You're just going to put a sheet of plastic wrap down so that it will be nice and easy to roll out your pie dough. Put a little bit of flour on that surface, and then roll the ball of dough in the flour so that the outside surface is covered with flour, but there's not too much flour on it. I'm handling this gently. Then I'm going to press it down so that it is nice and round. It's a nice round disc. Notice how I'm using my hands to keep the edge smooth. The smoother you keep the edge now, the easier it's going to be later on. Check and see if it's sticking to your plastic wrap. It shouldn't be sticking. Sometimes I turn it over so that there's flour on both sides. Then you're going to get a piece of plastic wrap and put over the top. You might need just a tiny bit more flour on top. Put a piece of plastic wrap over the top, and you're going to roll it the diameter of your pie pan plus the height on each side. To roll it out, make sure that you roll like you're going around the hands of the clock. Just go all the way around, a little roll at each place on the clock so you have a nice round circle. Now if at any point it cracks, just lift up the plastic wrap and keep that edge nice and even. It will make a nice difference when it comes time to put it in the pan if you've taken the time to keep these edges smooth and even and uncracked. And then you can just go back and roll it again until you have it the size you need. To put it into the pan, there are a lot of different techniques that people use. Some people will roll it onto the rolling pin. Some people will lift the whole piece of plastic up and then just flop that whole piece of plastic into the pan. But what I like to do is I take the plastic wrap off, then I take the one that's underneath. I might need to dust the top with just a little bit more flour so that it doesn't stick together. I take the plastic wrap that's underneath, and using it as a tool, I fold this in half, bring this back out of the way. If it's a little sticky, add just a little bit more flour, and then fold this in half again so that you've quartered it. Then all you need to do is bring your pie pan and put the point of the pastry into the middle of the pie pan, and then gently unfold the dough, and then all you have left to do is create a decorative edge. Now with this pie crust, we are baking it without anything in, so what we'll need to do is poke little holes all the way around the sides and the bottom so that you don't get bubbles. So I've pressed that in. Now I'm just going to fold this under, and it's just like you're working with Play-Doh. You'll find some places that are thick, some places that are thin, and you can stretch it around so that you have a pie crust that is equal all the way around on this edge. Then you can create your decorative edge. I'm going to do a pinch and twist method first to show you how to do that. You just take these two fingers, you pinch the dough and twist it with your knuckle, put your thumb back where the place that your knuckle was and pinch, pinch and twist, pinch and twist. You can do that all the way around, or you can use 2 fingers and another finger and make a zigzag edge. For a lot of people, this method is easier, or you can take a fork and just take the fork and press down all the way around to create a decorative edge. All along the bottom, you put pokey holes so it doesn't bubble up, and then also around the outside edges. And that is ready to bake. When you get the tortilla dough all made, form it into a great big long log, and then you're going to use the dough cutter to cut it into 12 equal sections. So just press down, cut it into those 12 equal sections, and then to form the balls, what you're going to do is take a piece of the dough and kind of get it into a ball, but then make a circle like this and press the dough up through that circle, and what that does is it creates a gluten sheath. The gluten is the protein in the flour, and that creates a nice smooth ball. When you get it all the way to the top, then to just squeeze with your thumb and then tuck those little ends under. You'll allow these balls to rest for 10 minutes before you do any pressing, and that allows the gluten to relax. Make sure that you keep all of the dough covered through all steps of the process. Now we are ready to press the tortillas. This is a lot of fun. Now what you want to do is put one of the dough balls into the tortilla press close to the center of the hinge, and then you press down and it will scream. If you let it scream too long, it blows up. This is what it looks like when it blows up. That's what you do not want. So what you need to do is press them quickly, very quickly. As soon as it begins to scream, you're done. And that is a perfect tortilla right there. If you wanted to brown it on the tortilla press, you would just leave it here and allow it to brown. What we do for class is we take the tortillas immediately out of the hot press, put them in an electric skillet, and we brown them there. When you get ready to make the empanadas, the dough is a little bit softer than the tortilla dough, so it might be a little sticky. I've got a little bit of flour here to roll the dough into the flour. Then I'm going to put it onto a cold tortilla press and sandwich the dough in between 2 pieces of parchment paper. I'm going to press it as thin as I can, then I will set it aside in the parchment paper until I've done all of the balls that I have parchment paper for, and then I will go back and I will repress the ones that I pressed to begin with to get them thinner. And the reason you do it in order like this is so that the gluten can relax, and as you press them each time, they will get thinner. When you get the empanadas rolled thin enough, then you peel back the parchment paper and you're going to fill it with the peach filling. Make sure that you don't get any on the edges. And then using the parchment paper as a tool, just fold that over, pinch the edges together, and then you can create a decorative edge. You can use a fork, or you can pinch it together, just making a little decorative edge all the way around the outside edge. These are ready to bake. We'll put an egg wash on it. There is 1 egg white and 2 tablespoons of water beaten together in here. We put the egg wash on and then sprinkle it with raw sugar, and then these are ready to bake. In lab today, you will be using a deep fat fryer. It is important when you're deep frying to always use a temperature controlled device. You can use a deep fat fryer, you can use an electric skillet, but keep in mind that it's very dangerous to deep fry on your stovetop. The stovetop has no temperature control, and unless you watch it very carefully using a thermometer, you might get distracted, walk away, and the next thing you know, your house is burned down. So use a temperature controlled deep fat fryer. The ones that we have in lab have a lid. When you're through using the deep fat fryer, make sure that you wipe this down thoroughly for the next group. It also has a basket. If you're going to use food in the basket down into the deep oil, you want to float the food item before it touches the basket. So basically, if you have a battered piece of fish and there's oil in here, you'll take the battered piece of fish and then float it in the oil and then only use the basket to bring it out. Otherwise, the batter sticks to the basket. When you're through today in lab, make sure that you clean this thoroughly, scrub any brown parts off. You shouldn't be able to feel any residual oil on the basket. In the bin, there's a fill line. You need to make sure before you begin frying that you fill the oil to the fill line so that there's plenty of oil. With oil in deep frying, it takes on the flavor of the food that you're frying. So you can reuse the oil, but keep in mind that you'd probably want to fry your donuts before you fry the fish so that you don't get that flavor carryover. You can also take good care of your oil by straining it after each use, and then you can keep it in your refrigerator and use it over and over again. In lab today, you will not be doing the straining, but you do need to wipe all these parts down. Make sure that you wipe this outer part down so that there is absolutely no oil or grease left on the outside container.